IB Nation Sports Talk up rolling. It's Mailbag Day on Wednesday. He's Vince D'Addario. I'm Sean Stiers. Vince doing double duty once again because it's summertime. And I mean, what else would he rather be doing than
This is fantastic. I'm doing shows right now, and then in about 2.5 hours, I'm going to go attend a concert over at Notre Dame. They're doing like a band concert out on the Irish Green. So we're going to sit outside, lawn chairs.
Like a Notre Dame band or like what?
Yeah, it's like an alumni band kind of a deal.
Okay.
Alumni and faculty, which is interesting. But my father-in-law is in the band. And so we are going to go and watch them play.
All right.
So
it's well, the sun's coming out. It's been pretty tolerable all day. I don't know what it's like out there right now with the sun out and everything, but maybe a pretty good night.
79 degrees. Yeah,
okay.
It's not bad. So maybe take an umbrella. My fair skin can't handle a lot of sun, but I'll be okay. But it'll be fun.
I watched the last half hour or so of you and Brian, and I don't know if you saw the question pop up. You're probably wondering where it came from. I didn't realize I was logged in with the Irish Breakdown account and not my personal account.
Oh, did you want one in there?
So my question was, buy, sell, hold, Dylan D'Addario is more shredded than Thor. I don't know if you saw that or not.
Did Thor put out a...
Well, we haven't seen a shirtless Thor, so I don't know. Okay. But I've seen a shirtless Dylan, whether I wanted to or not, a month or so ago on the socials out there. He was, it was actually pretty impressive. It was, as I said, it was maybe a little disturbing looking at it, just the whole pose and the way he did it. But
I don't blame you.
But if I had those kind of,
I'd be putting that out there too.
Yeah,
yeah, man.
Right.
He loves the gym. I will tell you that. Now
it looks like he loves the gym.
His shredded at 5'10", like 155 pounds, is going to look different than a shredded 6'5", 220, I would imagine. But if you're just talking like the actual shred, like seeing the muscles and stuff, I think I might have to give it to Junior. I think he might have it. I don't know that Thor is built to have like this. That's my shred action.
Thor bulk,
right.
He's a man. He's a man. Right. Bulk is there. Again, we haven't, seen like, a shirt off scenario, so we don't know exactly what that looks. But my feeling is Dylan is probably a little more shredded.
Yes. Thor
is just the bulkier, a lot of muscle, a lot of muscle mass there.
There's not an ounce of fat on my kid. You know what I mean? But if it's
a good thing too.
At 6'5", 220 or whatever James Rendell is, I would imagine it doesn't look like that. You know what I'm saying? There's a little bit more girth to it. So, yeah.
I'm just saying I think Dylan could win a pose down.
I think so
they
too.
Were up there doing like a Mr. Olympia type situation.
I agree.
I think Dylan could win the pose down for sure.
I agree. I don't want to be the one, even though he's my kid. I wouldn't even want to be the one like doing the baby oil and all that stuff.
Let's just stay away from the baby oil. Then we get into it.
He said it was a showdown, like a
Top Gun
down.
beach volleyball situation there. So they're just hosing him down with baby oil. Look good
the beach football. Yeah.
That's right.
He's at practice right now. I'm sure it's so funny because he's a full-time football player now. He comes home last night from practice. He's like, Dad, it was so boring. I go, welcome to being a specialist, dude. Like, what did you think?
That's right.
I said,
I mean, you want to go do this in college. Do you think it's going to get any more exciting because you're in college?
I go, do you remember us going to these spring practices at these colleges and seeing the specialists just freaking hanging out in the corner during practice, not doing anything the whole time? I said, that's what your life is like for the next 5 to 6 years, buddy. So you better get used to it if this is what you want to do. If you want more action, then you better be leaving football early to go to soccer practice. I don't know what else to tell you.
If you're just coming into the show, I'm begging you to hit the like button at this point. Begging you, literally, because I know a lot of people didn't realize they were getting into a PG-13 type, whatever. As DK said, hold it. What show did I just join? Like, what channel am I on?
I mean, that's fair.
Right
that's
now.
Fair. Because if you didn't have context, you would be very disturbed by the entire conversation.
Would. You still might be, even with the context. I don't know.
But if you're curious as to what we're talking about, you can go to my kid's Twitter and you scroll down a little bit.
Just search Dylan DiDario on Twitter.
On the X Factor.
I'm sure that photo is still up there from a month or so ago. Like he's probably never taken it down at this point.
Oh, he doesn't take stuff down.
Was that his girlfriend in the photo, by the way?
Yes, it is his girlfriend.
And was she taking? Do I remember right? Was she the one who was actually taking the photo while he did the?
Correct.
Whoopties in his hair and all that stuff.
That is 100% accurate. As yes, that is
okay.
That is what was taking place.
All right, let's take an actual question and read.
Okay, I was gonna say
just a reminder: hit that like button again, please. Even after all that, please.
Yeah, no doubt.
So, Salty wants to know: the Great One has changed his jersey number from 19 to number 1. Is this unfettered cockiness, justified confidence, or of no particular importance?
Well. This is a good question because I would say it's justified confidence at this point. He was the number 1 receiver in spring. Now, not everybody that is going to be on the roster in the fall is on the roster in the spring, but he was the best guy out there. And I don't know that it was all that close, to be perfectly honest with you. So, you know what? Go get that number 1 jersey. I didn't like him in 19. I'll just say that. He needed to do something different. I don't know if 1 was the answer, but he needed to not be 19 anymore. So I'm good with him going to 1. I believe he was 9 in high school, and obviously that number is taken at Notre Dame. So instead of just chopping off the 1 and going with 9, he chopped off the 9 and went with 1. So okay, let's do it.
I love it. All the receivers, it seems like, are going to the single digits these days. And like you said, you didn't care for the number 80 on Jordan Faison. I kind of liked it just because, he's a smaller guy and he's got a big number. I sort of like the juxtaposition of big guy, little number versus little guy, big number. I think it's kind of, there's some fun in seeing that. But whether it's, I would say justified confidence. And if it borderlines on unfettered cockiness, I would not mind that either because, let's face it, whether it's Randy Moss or Chad Johnson, Ocho Cinco or Devontae Adams, or you go on down the list. And for whatever reason, the wide receivers kind of end up being the biggest divas once they get to the NFL, especially, right? So I'm not saying we want an unbridled diva at Notre Dame, but I would not mind seeing one with some unbridled confidence, cockiness, whatever you want to call it. We've been missing that at Notre Dame in recent years, so I would take that. So I'll play it down the middle and go justified confidence because I love the fact that number 1 is coming back to the offense, like we talked about earlier this week.
Yeah, yep, no doubt about it. Love it.
Let me see here. Connor, your thoughts on Notre Dame making a good run in the playoffs? I think we're going farther than people think. And he says by that he means college football fans.
Oh, well, that's not setting the bar very high that we're going further than other college football fans think that Notre Dame's going to go. So my definition of a good run in the playoffs is winning 2. Okay. Like that would be a good run. Like that would be something that they haven't done. Obviously they have never done it in a playoff, but something that they haven't done in a long time because I feel like that second round game is like a New Year's 6
That's kind of like the New Year's 6 game. Yeah.
Correct. And they haven't done that since 93. And so if they win that second game, I think they've gone further than most people anticipate. So yes, I would agree that they will make a run in the playoffs. Now, I don't know if they'll make it past that, but I feel like they can win the first 2.
Yeah. So if good run is winning 2 games, because does that get you to the Final Four if you win the 2 games, right?
Yeah, you've won 2.
I know we've done this before. Yeah. I would call that a good run. at least getting to the Final Four. And I think that that's something that this team, because of the quarterback that they're going to have and because of the defense they're going to have, those two things go a long way at any level of football. But at the level that Notre Dame plays at, that will go a long way for them. So I would I give that a very good shot. And, like if we're kind of holding this up against the, straw man college football fans in general, I mean, look, everyone's a fan of their own team first. So, of course,
for sure,
the Ohio States and Alabamas and Texas of the world, Michigans, they're not going to believe it for Notre Dame until they see it. But I think that this team has every reason to believe that they can make that kind of push this season.
Yeah.
So, all in for it. All in.
Yeah.
A couple of different super chats that I just saw. And first of all, thank you very much, Anthony, as always, who always drops in a little super chat every now and then. What do you think? This is an interesting one. And I am not a huge men's basketball historian. Obviously, I've been around the women's side at Notre Dame.
Starting 5.
A lot longer. What do you think about saving this for Friday's show?
That's a great idea. I love this
kind
question.
Of think about this a little bit more.
But I need some time to come up with, because I'm going to forget somebody that's so super obvious. And the other part is with the women's game, I think it'll be a little bit easier because there's less years to talk about.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
But I mean, gosh, you're talking about going back to the 70s for the men's team, and I mean, only one men's team's been to the Final Four. So you're probably going to have somebody that was on that team. You know what I mean? So this is going to be, I might have to have, for the men, I might have to have like a starting 5 and then like a rotation, like an 8 or something like that.
And the women's they're both going to be tough, but the women's is going to be tougher simply because of the sustained run of excellence that they've had here. With
they've won national
the fact that you had Skylar Diggins and Arike and Jewel Lloyd and Jackie Young,
right?
like Neil Ivey, for that matter. Think of all the great guards that have come through this program. That's what's going to be the toughest for me. I think the men's is tougher for a different reason, just because you kind of have to go back and think about it more, a little bit more historically and go back farther. Yeah,
more time for the men, but then more depth for the women, like more elite depth for the women. I think DK's comment is hilarious, by the way.
Oh my gosh. I should have known that we were getting ourselves into, some craziness when I brought that up.
Have you done Anthony's yet?
Anthony's super chat?
Yeah. Oh, okay.
We did the thank you for that.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure, because DK's comment is fantastic.
Did not.
I just texted you the picture, by the way, just so you could keep it and have it forever.
I didn't need to see that again. just imagining it was enough, but
no, I had to bring it back. Took me a while to find it because that was over spring break.
Oh man.
But you're welcome.
Tomaz or Thomas. It looks like a Tomaz. Tomaz. How much do we follow Notre Dame basketball? What about other sports? I mean, obviously, I don't know. That's the first time I remember seeing Tomaz's name.
Yeah, man. Welcome.
How you say Tomaz. Obviously, I follow women's basketball very closely. We try to follow men's basketball, pretty closely. The last few years, let's just be honest, have not been good. So it's been a tougher follow, especially since I travel with women's basketball, doing the radio play-by-play and stuff like that. It's a lot harder to follow a team that is just quite honestly not been very good for the last few years. Followed it much more closely in the break, when I know, for what the last year they made it to the NCAA tournament.
Sure.
It's always fun when it's always more fun and more interesting to follow when you've got a team that's successful.
Well, and we have found out that people don't really want to hear about it, especially when they're not very good,
that's a good point, because when I started a couple of years ago, we started off where I was trying to write stuff for both women's basketball and men's basketball. And because of the fact that we have the internet and analytics with literally everything that we post up on our website, the stories about women's basketball were far and away getting more interest than the men's basketball.
Right.
And it to the point where we started doing very little men's stuff because it just wasn't worth the effort that we had to put into it to do it. Yeah. So, that it spiked back up a little bit last year because of the first year with a new head coach and all that kind of stuff. And so hopefully that continues. That's going to be something we're going to have to, hopefully it becomes a good problem to have.
Yes.
You know what I mean? As we sort of decide how much time and attention we're devoting to everything. Speaking of basketball, we can stay on that. Salty wants to know, will Liza Carlin end the season as a starter and top 3 scorer for the women's basketball team? That is a tough one, man, because
top
I don't
score. There's a lot of hot hands and a lot of places for points, man.
I know. I mean, when you look at the fact that Hidalgo averaged over 20 last year, Citron is a player who can easily average 20. I think Maddie Westbeld can push 20, and Olivia Miles probably not going to be pushing 20 because of her, the fact that she is such a pass first type point guard. Who else? I mean, Leah Tu King was close to 20 last year. Carlin was just under 18 last year. So I just think that that's going to be a little bit. I think that's going to. I'm using 20 as the mark.
Yeah,
that wasn't the question, but I think that's going to be too hard just with all of the options that they're going to have. As I said in the interview with her yesterday, and I've said this before, including her and all the players I just rattled off, including Leah Tu King from Pittsburgh, you've got 6 players who have been first team all conference in their career at some point on this roster. And you've got Kate Koval, the freshman McDonald's All-American, coming in the door as well. So,
yep.
I think it's going to be a good problem to have. I think that I'm even curious to see what Hannah's average ends up being on this team, because I think it can be more evenly distributed, where you've probably got all 6 of those players like 14 points and above, basically. And that, again, if you've got 6 players averaging 14 points or better, that's who you're going to guard.
Oh, that's exactly the point. I mean, we talked a little bit about the women's team in the last show, believe it or not. And this is going to be Niele Ivy's biggest challenge going into next year, is figuring out who gets the minutes, what that rotation looks like, because you could go from I forget exactly how many players they have on the team. But when you look, here it is. I've got it pulled up still. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. They got 12 players. And I think you can go 1 to 11. 1 to 12. 1 to 11, 1 to 12 in that neighborhood, because I think one is a walk-on. So you could legitimately play 11 people. How do you put 11 people on the floor? That's obviously not going to happen. And so what does that rotation look like? How does she juggle the egos and I don't mean egos in a bad way. These are all really talented players. You know what I mean? And so what does that look like, and how does it change from week to week, and, matchup to matchup? And I find that fascinating. I really do.
King and Carlin are the only players who were not McDonald's All-Americans coming out of high school, but they have, because of they have played in good conferences and on, like in Carlin's case, a good team, but in King's case, a good conference, the ACC, but not good teams. But because of the way that they have played, I mean, that's obviously why Niele Ivy went out and got them. They have played themselves into, like, if they would have played at that level, they would have been McDonald's All-Americans. But so every player that you mentioned, McDonald's All-American, with the exception of those 2, but they are playing at very high levels. They have proven themselves to be top performers in Power 5, whatever you want to call it, college basketball. So that's why there's so much optimism with this team this season.
It's going to be fun. Like, the question that we had was a buy, sell, hold on whether Notre Dame will be a Final Four team and a championship level team, or championship team, like make it in the championship game. It's a buy. Like, they've got one of the best rosters in the country. It's a buy. I bought it. I mean, there's going to be a lot of expectations on this team, but this team is fun to watch, man. Like, I'm excited about it.
For sure. And it's going to be Even more fun. DK, the Burger King All-American. All right.
That's funny.
Will wants to know how you're on two podcasts at one time. He must be watching the first one on delay or something.
Will, it's talent. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. You gotta bring it every day. You gotta bring it every day. I can tell you, I told my wife last night, I either need to upgrade my chair or I need to get like one of those stadium seats or something, some sort of a cushion for the old booty, because the hours and hours that I'm in this chair without standing up, I need something down there.
Seriously. Vince, here's one from Andre we can spend a little time on. I think, because of the way that he is asking this. Andre wants to know, who would be your game wreckers in each position group this fall? So,
holy cow.
We've got a lot of positions we can go through there.
All right. So let's do it. Here we go.
Where do you want to start? Let's start with the offensive line. You want to start at quarterback?
I don't know. I always go quarterback first. I thought that might be the easiest one.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's, Riley Leonard, right? I mean,
how could it not be? But just to be different, I'll say CJ Carr is going to be the depth chart wrecker.
Ooh. Still hanging your hat. Hanging your hat on CJ Carr.
Hey, man, it's a take that I feel comfortable with, and it is. I'm holding strong to that. Holding strong to it.
Okay. I mean, I'm still really curious to see like what that depth chart looks like when training camp opens. I don't think it's going to look any different.
I don't think it is either.
At the end of spring, but
I'm very interested to see that, and then how they play when we're there, because then we'll get the spin of you guys aren't there every day, and right. But if it's obvious every time we're there who the second best guy in the room is, and they still don't change the depth chart, I will have problems with that.
And I think the team will have problems with that as well.
Good call.
You can't lie. You can't lie to the team, because when they're around, they know who's performing better. But I mean, for obvious reasons, Riley Leonard is the answer, because of the fact you go out and you get a guy who's a dual threat quarterback like Leonard, and you give him the kind of offensive line that he's going to have, and you give him the kind of offensive coordinator like he's going to have now with Mike Denbrock, who just produced a Heisman Trophy winner last year. So I'm looking for Riley Leonard to wreck a lot of games with his arm and his legs.
Love it
this season. So how about the offensive line? Who is your masher? Who's the game wrecker from Notre Dame's offensive line?
Billy Schrauth. Billy Schrauth is going to be my game wrecker. I think he should have played last year. Apparently he wasn't ready. He's 100% ready this year. There's going to be, as much as you can have highlight reels of a guard, he's going to have some highlight reel moments on this offensive line this year.
It's hard to disagree with, and it's because of the play that Schrauth showed when he got in late in the season that you kind of have this good problem to have with him, as well as Rocco Spindler and Pat Coogan battling, three guys for two jobs at the two guard spots. I'm going to go with Ashton Craig, though, because I just love the physicality, that size and the physicality. I think he can be a real masher there in the middle of Notre Dame's offensive line. So I'm going to go with Ashton Craig as my O-line game wrecker for Notre Dame.
He was my sleeper for All-American this year.
Really?
Yeah, sleeper.
I like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Big Ashton Craig fan.
Okay, so we've got quarterback, we've got offensive line. How about the running back? Who's the running back game wrecker?
Jeremiah Love, just because he can get the ball in so many different ways, throwing it, running it, just all of the above. I mean, it's got to be him. He's going to wreck a lot of defensive coordinators' games with what he's going to be able to do.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like, I think about him, and it's like dialing it up a couple of notches from what we saw when we first really got to start seeing, Braden Lindsey that one season. How many years ago has that been? Probably 4 years ago, when they were sort of dabbling with Braden Lindsey and some of the things that he could do. The guy averaged, I think it was like 18 yards a touch between his receptions. And when they would hand him the ball that season, then for whatever reason, like it just never materialized the next couple. I mean, I guess we know what the reason was, because, who was running the show on offense still. But like I just see Jeremiah Love, again, dialing it up a couple more notches from the kind of things that we were seeing from Lindsey when he would get the ball in his hands that season. Okay, so that's the running back. Wide receiver.
This is the toughest one for me because there is no. I mean, Salty's going to want us to say Great House, of course. Tommy's going to want us to say Bo Nix. I mean, not Bo Nix, Bo Collins. Excuse me. And it's the definition of game wrecker. Like, what is our definition of game wrecker, Sean? Like somebody that is the best in the group, or is it somebody that is like what's our definition?
I mean, it is pretty open-ended. Yeah. And like, I think especially when you're talking about the skill position type guys, I don't think it's necessarily a guy who is going to just sort of dominate playing and play out. But it's kind of like I would not that they necessarily have a Rocket Ismail on this team.
Right. No.
But Rocket was a game wrecker, right?
Okay. Yes,
because
for sure.
Anytime the ball is in his hands, he's got a chance to hit a home run, take it the distance. Like
all
that's
right.
what I would look like with running backs and receivers. I would look at that home run threat type guy. That would be kind of how I would define those kind of skill position guys as a game wrecker.
I will take the one wide receiver that has already been on All-American. He's an All-American, and it's Jaden Harrison because it's for his return game, but your definition of a chance to score every time he touches the ball, I think that's Harrison. I think he's got a chance to be that guy. So he won't be the best receiver they have, but he'll be the guy that could take it to the house every time he touches the ball.
Yeah, I don't know, like as a kickoff returner, like if we want to include him as, like specifically as the returner, I would say him as a receiver. I'm leaning more toward Mitchell. As Chris Mitchell is who I'm leaning toward from the wide receiver group. Again, not that he's going to be the guy who's going out and getting bulk receptions. It might only be like 2, 3, 4 receptions a game or something like that. But I think that he's the kind of guy who is capable of getting, like a minimum 40-yard type pass play every game, like that kind of guy.
Yep.
Ends up with a big yards per catch type thing. Tight end. I think this one's a little tougher because there's so many issues with the health of the team. Are you willing to say Mitchell Evans?
I am 100% willing to say Mitchell Evans because I think he is going to be ready to go week 1. The issue obviously is going to be, is he going to be healthy the whole season? If he is healthy the whole season, he's got a chance to be an All-American. So I will say Mitchell Evans.
I'm going to go Eli Raridon. I think we're going to see big things from Eli Raridon just with that, with the length that he has, this, just the unique, I think, skill set that kind of separates him a little bit from the rest of the guys in that group. I'm going to go with Raridon. And, Joe made a good game. Like, I kind of forgot about Jordan Faison in terms of the receivers, but I think there's a good case for him as well. But I'm going to stick with Mitchell still.
All right.
So we've done the entire offense. So defense, you want to go interior defensive line and defensive ends, or do you want to go like?
I had a defensive line person. I wrote them all down as we were talking.
Okay.
So I had Boubacar Traore as my game wrecker. I think he has a chance to be a game wrecker. He's not going to be a starter, but I think he'll come in key moments and have an opportunity to make a good name for himself.
I like that. And that's the way that I would go as well. I think that I still go back and forth on whether I feel like Jordan Botelho is truly going to break out this season, but I
have a hard time with that one.
Yeah, like like Joe is saying, RJ Oben. I think that Oben is going to have a really good year.
He'll be solid.
I think it's going to be just very similar to what we saw from Jean-Baptiste last season. I don't think it's going to exceed what we saw from Jean-Baptiste. They're both they're almost carbon copies of each other, just in terms of their, their size, their height, just the whole thing, the way they play. So I think that we're going to see something very similar from RJ Oben to Jean-Baptiste, but in terms of like who's the game record type guy at defensive end, I would push it towards Traore based on what we saw from him in the spring and just the upside that he has compared to Botelho. Like Jordan Botelho has been out there long enough that if there's something next level for him, it's like, well, why haven't you already hit it? You hope that there's something out there, but I think that Traore is going to get some opportunities and maybe surpass Botelho by the time all is said and done this season. What about interior defensive tackle? I'm sorry, I cut you off there. If you
No. You're fantastic, sir. Let's see, a game wrecker on the interior.
I'm going to go Jason Onye. I'll just give my answer.
Here. Thank you.
I'm going to go like Cross and Mills. I think are going to be, both be very consistent.
Sure.
But I'm going to go Onye for his pass rush skills when he gets into those nickel and dime type situations. Again, that's assuming that they use him like we saw them use him a little bit in the spring, and like he said that they plan on using him. If they continue with that plan and he kind of becomes the pass rush specialist from the interior, I think that helps out those defensive ends on the outside because of the attention that he can potentially draw. But I think that he's gonna do some damage, that interior defensive line kind of pass rush specialist type situation.
I was gonna say Onye is a great answer, and I agree with you. That's probably what I would have picked. But I'll say Riley Mills just to be different.
Okay.
I think he's got a chance. He's kind of in Howard Cross's shadow a little bit. Howard Cross got some All-America love last year. He didn't get any of that. I think that the duo of those two is really, really good. And so a lot of attention is going to go to Howard Cross. So I think Riley Mills is going to have an opportunity to really have a breakout here, really be a game wrecker, since that's what we're looking for. I think he's got a real good opportunity to do that. So I'll take Riley Mills here.
Yeah, I see Bryce Young, Donovan Heinisch being nominated there. I know Bryce Young comes in with a lot of accolades and all that kind of stuff.
And he looks like a grown man. I mean, he's going to have a chance. He's third team right now. Maybe that changes moving forward. Definitely a possibility. But, he's going to hit that freshman wall too, you would think. And so that'll be an interesting.
And he's got a couple good, he's got Oben and he's got Josh Burnham in front of him over there.
Also
right
true.
Now. So
and I think Josh Burnham has a chance to be a game wrecker as well. Sure. I think he's going to be really good this year.
Sure. How about corner?
Christian Gray. I am taking Christian Gray on this one because I think he's going to get a ton of opportunities because I think he's going to start opposite Benjamin Morrison. And they're not going to be throwing at Benjamin Morrison. They're going to go the other direction. And I think that Christian Gray is going to be the recipient of a lot of action his way, and he's going to break out in that manner.
I mean, that's a good call because that's why Morrison, his freshman year, had so many opportunities because it's like, well, you're going to throw at Cam Hart. You're going to, they kept going Benjamin Morrison's direction and he kept intercepting him. And I think you're exactly right. For that same reason, I think Christian Gray is going to benefit like that because you got to pick your poison at some point. And I think that Morrison is going to direct a lot of things in Christian Gray's way. And I think Christian Gray will definitely make him pay. Linebacker. Who's your game-wrecking linebacker?
This one was a little harder. I'm going to go with Drake Bowen because he's going to be the starting middle linebacker. He's going to have the biggest opportunity to wreck games. I didn't select him as like an All-American earlier on in our other show as the possibility of being an All-American. That's a year from now. I think this year he just needs to go in, do his job, be productive, the whole thing. If he plays out of his mind, then he's got an opportunity to be that guy. But I think we're a year early on that. And I'm not saying he's going to be a bad middle linebacker. I think he's going to be great. I think he's going to do his job and do a great job. But I think, All-America status would be next year. But I think he could make some plays that you're like, oh, okay, that changed the dynamic of the game. Like, I think that could definitely be the case.
Yeah, see, like, I see some KVAs being nominated there. Kingston Viliamu Asa for, I'm
not sure I understand.
No, me either.
Yeah.
For people who say that, we need to say his full name. Okay, so Kingston. I still it's him and Bowen playing the same position. So
correct.
Don't know what that's going to look like yet. I generally Bowen is probably the first one who came to mind for me. KVA is in there as well, but again, I don't know what the role is going to look like with Jack Kaiser being there. And so I'm going to go outside the box a little bit and say Jaden Osbury.
Ooh, I like it.
Because of the way he finished the spring with them using him in multiple roles. I think he's going to have an opportunity to see a lot of snaps and to be a real difference maker, whether it's pass rush, in coverage, kind of in that nickel spot, or, just playing true rover, or, even maybe some will, whatever it happens to be. So I'll go with Osbury. Assuming that he kind of continues that rise that he was showing toward the end of spring.
I like it. I think that's a good one, actually. I think that's a really good one.
So that leaves us with safety. That is our last position to cover in our position by position game records.
Well, look, the obvious answer for me is Xavier Watts. I mean, how can he not be a game wrecker?
Right.
He
was last year.
He's a unanimous All-American. He was a Defensive Player of the Year. And as Brian so aptly pointed out this afternoon, how you can avoid a corner by going to the other side of the field. It's much more difficult to avoid a field safety because he's going to be everywhere.
Right.
And
that's how he made plays last year.
Right. He came back this year for a reason.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I feel like his cerebral play is going to be even better than last year, and he's going to be all around the football. And so, I think Adon Schuler is going to be a good player. I don't even know if he's a starter. I think he's the third safety. And so it's got to be Xavier Watts, man. I don't know how you can leave him off the list.
Yeah. Completely agree with that. Good question, Andre. So I think that does it, because we even included kickoff returner there, like if we're including Jaden Harrison. So those are our Notre Dame game record picks for the season. Jesse would want me to write all those down and see how they turned out when it's all.
I'm sure. We don't revisit very often, but we leave it up to the subscribers to tell us how wrong we are.
Yes, we leave it to DK to bring up, everything that we say wrong, right?
Yeah, they never miss a beat in that regard. Right. So my face was already made into an avatar earlier today. So
wow.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Tommy, should there be a separate Heisman awarded to a defensive player alongside the offensive player? I like the idea of a more prestigious award for a defensive player than just, whether it's the Bronco Nagurski or whatever. I mean, the Heisman is the Heisman. It's supposed to be the best player, but as we know,
it goes offense.
Defensive players. Yeah. Defensive players completely get overlooked in the conversation.
Yeah, I woun't mind having something along those lines. I mean, they do obviously have a Defensive Player of the Year, so maybe they just need to hype it up a little bit more and, get a little something behind it. That's going to be the problem if they just make up an award now in 2024. I don't know how much hype it's going to have. Yeah. It's not going to have the prestige of the Heisman Trophy and all of that stuff. But I like the concept. I like the idea of it.
I do too.
But I don't think it's going to happen.
So what about separate Heisman for non-quarterbacks? I mean, they have the Davey O'Brien and the Doak Walker.
Right.
I mean, they've got positional awards, right?
Right. Now we're getting into the everybody gets a ribbon conversation. And that's, my stance on that. So, no, I do not think we should be making up even more awards for people. I do not subscribe to that.
Yeah, I mean, they're already awards. Right. It's just that they're not as prestigious as.
Correct. And when you walk into the Goog and you go down the hallway that leads you to the weight room, you see all of the individual awards that are given out to the, individual position groups and which Notre Dame players have won them and all that. There's a bunch of them. I mean, there's literally one for every position group. So I'm not a fan of everybody getting a trophy and everything.
I know you're not. I know you're not. Vince wants nobody to get anything.
Nope.
That's what he wants.
That's right. So that when I win it, it means something.
Should former Heisman winners be the only people who vote for the award?
No, absolutely not. Because they're
actually more biased than like the media people that most people think are the biased ones.
100%.
They're affiliated directly with their old teams.
Yes. And you are assuming that these Heisman Trophy winners of the past are watching all of these players.
Attention. Yeah.
Like that's not reality, man. Like they trot them all out every year, and they stand under their picture and all that stuff. And it's a great photo op. And they do all get a vote. But I would not want them to be the only ones vote. You'd get some really whacked out choices if that was the case. That's a hard pass for me.
Concur. Totally concur. Benjamin wants to know, would Brady Quinn still be in the NFL if he would have landed with a different team?
I mean, we're talking a 20-year career. If that was, almost 20-year career at this point.
Yeah, I think somebody said earlier he'd be retired by now.
Yeah. Now, do I think he would have had a better NFL career if he would have landed with a different team? I do. I think going to the Browns was about the worst possible place he could have gone.
Yeah.
So in that regard, yes. Do I think he would still be there in 2024? I'm going to go no. I don't think he was that good to be around that long, but there's been guys with less talent than Brady Quinn in the NFL longer than to now, right?
Yeah, If New England, there was no way New England was ever going to draft him because of how high he ended up getting drafted because they had Tom Brady. But I'm just thinking like back to that time, like if he had gone to New England, think about Matt Castle, who barely ever took a snap in his career at USC and actually ended up being a starter for a couple of years because he got to back up Tom Brady. Brady gets hurt. He won 10 or 11 games that season, and he got a decent contract out of it, and he got to stick around for a while. If Brady Quinn had gone somewhere and backed up a Tom Brady or even, I guess was Brett Favre. I think Brett Favre was still around. Yeah, he would have been around still at that point. Like if he could have gone somewhere in a good situation where he got to sit behind a real quarterback for a couple of years, like think about Jordan Love coming behind Aaron Rodgers, for example, something like that. If he would have been I do think he could have had a longer and more productive, and I thought that he was going to have a longer and more productive pro career than what he had, but he was with a horrible organization who was spitting out quarterbacks. Literally, they were just putting him in a grinder every year and spitting him out.
It's horrible.
Horrible situation for him to be in.
Absolutely horrible situation. By the time he finally got out of there, he just already got his brains beat in enough, and it was a losing situation. And so, if he would have gone someplace else, I feel like he would have been more successful. He just went to friggin' Cleveland. It's brutal.
I was trying to think, like, just names weren't coming to me for whatever. Yeah, Sean said, like Sean Stewart said, Peyton Manning or Drew Brees. And again, other good situation. Brees was still early on in his career at that point, where Manning was kind of, I guess, probably reaching the midpoint at that point. So like Manning would have been a good, like you talk about a good guy to sit behind and learn from.
Sure.
Like
oh yeah.
Peyton Manning, but yeah, like any of those where you had an established good quarterback where Brady would have just had to kind of sit there, sit in the quarterback room, sit in the meetings, absorb things, learn from pros. And then, because everybody gets hurt at some point, if he had the opportunity, go in and perform. I think that it could have worked out definitely better, but he was thrown into the fire
because he had a good head on his shoulders. And I think that's a big part of it, right? He was never a guy you were going to have to worry about from a character standpoint or anything like that. He was always going to work hard. It was just, he was in a bad actual football situation and it just didn't work out.
Correctamundo. Interesting question from Joe. Do you think it's possible Notre Dame could be the only undefeated team in the playoffs?
It's possible. It's unlikely, I would say, but it's definitely possible. Brian said earlier today he doesn't think any team is going to go undefeated this year based on schedules and all the different things that are going on. I have not done that deep of a dive. Could Notre Dame go undefeated? Yes, they could go undefeated. Now, this schedule is not as soft as a lot of people want to make it out to be. I think they'll probably be 11-1, but it's definitely possible. And if they are, great. They're the number 5 seed, and they got a great shot.
I mean, the way this question is, it's not asking for us to be definitive. Do I think it's possible? Yeah, I think it's possible because of what you just said. Like Brian was saying, that there probably aren't going to be any undefeated teams because of the fact that you've got these stacked conferences.
Yeah.
Now, I would give Notre Dame. I mean, it was like a month or so ago. They spit out the numbers, and Notre Dame has the best chance of any team in the nation to go undefeated this season. I think it's only like a 15 or 16% chance, but it's still the best chance of anyone. So I think it's feasible. I think it could happen. I mean, look, just like always, the schedule's going to come down to what, 2 or 3 games, right?
Sure.
That's what it's going to come down to. And I think that it's definitely possible for Notre Dame. And if they are undefeated, I do think there won't be any other Power 5 teams that are unbeaten going into the playoff.
Yeah. Fair.
Super chat from Lou Holtz, Thunder and Bolts. Thank you very much, sir.
One of my favorites.
Give truth serum to Brian Kelly and ask him any question. What would it be? Same for Marcus Freeman. Man,
there's so many different ways I could go with this. I'm going to try to keep it professional as much as possible. I would say, why did you hang on to Brian Van Gorder as long as you did?
Good one.
How about that? Because 2016 didn't have to happen.
That's a good one. Keep going.
Well, the one for Marcus Freeman, I don't know. I don't know that nothing controversial has really happened under Marcus Freeman. You could say the 10 men thing on the field against Ohio State. Right. He's the head coach. That's not his job to be counting players. So I don't necessarily blame him. Obviously, it was a problem of communication, and the buck stops with the head coach. But in the moment, it's not as oh, I see we have 10. Let's just do it. We're good. It's not like a decision that he made. So I don't know that there's anything like that I would ask. It's a truth serum, so I want him to tell the truth. Let's see.
Yeah, Sloppy Joe said, who is really at fault for the 10-man thing? I mean, does it matter who's at fault at this point?
It doesn't matter to me. I would to get the conversation going, I would ask him something like, is being the head coach at Notre Dame everything you thought it would be, both positive and negative? And that I think that could turn into a fun conversation. How about that? I know that's not a great question, but he hasn't really, like I said, nothing controversial has really happened.
Yeah, I mean, Craig is putting, ask Freeman what his thoughts are on Brian Kelly. I mean, that would actually be pretty interesting.
And right? NH has a good one too. If Ohio State wanted Marcus Freeman to be head coach, would you go? If Ohio State came calling, would you go? I think that's a legit question to ask. Everybody thinks it's an automatic yes. I don't think it is, personally. But
I'm having a hard time coming up with one for Brian Kelly. I'm thinking, okay, so what was the real timeline of events at the end that led to him going to LSU? Because obviously he BS'd everyone when he with his version of how it went down and where he, all this different. So that would be, I guess, the biggest thing. What were the timeline of events, and why did you bail on a team that was still in the middle? Why did you, was it really just money? Was that it? Yeah. Why you bailed on a team that was still in the hunt for a college football playoff spot?
Yeah. I know you're not asking the question, but I think he legitimately thinks he couldn't win at Notre Dame.
Long term, you mean? He felt like
national championship.
Yeah. Oh, I agree with that as well.
Yeah,
I agree with that as well.
But would he admit it?
Right. But how things shook out at the end, what the whole timeline was, when things happened, and everything else.
Yeah, because the thing about BK, if you look back at his tenure, he always had his eye on something else.
Right.
You know, whether it was the Eagles or whether,
and like he tried to play that off,
Yeah.
I just wanted to see how an NFL organization was run.
Yeah.
No, you didn't. If they had offered you that job, you were jumping on it. You were
100%.
taking it. You were taking
100%. Like, it just always felt like he had a wandering eye. You know what I mean? And if the right lady came along, he was going to jump, and it finally did with LSU. So, yeah.
Craig would ask Freeman if he wants to be a head coach in the NFL. And I mean, that might be a
legit question.
Because like when you think, and I think you guys had this kind of toward the end of the buy, sell, hold show today. I think somebody asked something similar to, it might've been Craig for that matter. But like when you look at how young Marcus Freeman is, and Ryan Day is still relatively young as well. And people obviously making the connection with Freeman to Ohio State and all that kind of stuff. When you look at how young Freeman is, it seems like the only next step for him, there are really only three, it seems like. If he really has any eyes on going back to Ohio State because it's his alma mater, whatever, if that's appealing to him or not. 2 would be the NFL, because again, look at the age. If he has the success at Notre Dame, NFL opportunities are most likely going to come his way because of the kind of personality that he has and everything else. And 3 would be being an athletic director.
Yeah.
Someplace. Those seem like those would be the 3 most likely next steps for Marcus Freeman if he were to leave Notre Dame for whatever reason.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Those are good questions. You guys are making me think tonight. I'm not sure how I feel about that, but
I know.
Still appreciated.
I tell you what, Vince, I'm going to do a couple more here, and then we're going to get into some rapid fire.
Beautiful.
Salty wants to know, will Howard Cross have a better year this season than last, or hold steady, or have a drop?
It's kind of a buy, sell, hold kind of a situation.
Yeah.
I think he will have a better year than he had last year. I don't know that it'll necessarily shake out from a statistical standpoint, but I think at the end of the day, he will get more All-American type accolades than he did last year. So that will equal a better season. And coming back to Notre Dame will have paid off for him.
Yeah, I think statistically it's going to be tough to have a better season because you just don't see nose guards having the kind of year that Cross had last year. Like interior defensive linemen don't get those kind of tackle numbers typically. But I think especially, again, it's not just him, it's also who's playing next to him.
Yeah.
He's still got a good defensive end playing next to him. Like when you talk about RJ Oben, and he's got a really good 3 technique playing next to him, and Riley Mills as well. So offensive lines are going to have to pick their poison when it comes to who they're going to try to block and if they're going to be able to block them. So I think Howard Cross is going to be a really productive nose guard once again. But to me, I think it's going to be tough for him to get the kind of just pure tackle numbers that he had last season.
Yeah.
But I think it's going to be a really good year still. Salty always with the good questions. All right, Vince, are you ready for rapid fire?
Let's do it. Whoop, 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 whoop. I'm trying to remember what all the questions were. I read them earlier today. Lots happened since then.
That's very true. So here we go. JJ Redick just walked away from a lucrative podcasting career to become the head coach of the LA Lakers. My question to you, with the podcast thing in mind, what current Notre Dame football coach would you want to see have his own podcast?
This was a great question, and there was no answer that came directly into my brain when I first read it. But I think the more I've thought about it, I've got 2 answers. So the first one from just I think he's a good guy. I think he's got a great mind for football. I'd like to hear kind of stuff, stuff like that. It would be Mike Denbrock.
Okay.
And I think he's a personable guy. I think it would be interesting, like that kind of a thing. If I wanted to skew a little younger and go with entertaining, I think I'm going to go Max Bulla. I think he could be very entertaining when it comes to a podcast.
That is a good one. And that guy like talks a million miles an hour
Yes.
sometimes too. But
yes, he does.
I think you're right. It could be fun. I didn't really think about Max Bulla, but I think that is a good answer. Actually, that would probably be the answer for defense. I went with the offensive side of the ball though, and I went with Dylan McCullough because like he reminds me, you know, I was sitting here like when I was going through the Rolodex of, you know, the coaches. It's like he's a little bit like Marcellus Wallace in Pulp Fiction, you know, Ving Rhames. You know, he's like physically imposing, but he's got this kind of chill demeanor. But you know, like he can talk the talk. You know, it's like a cross between Apollo Creed and Marvin Hagler, if I'm going with boxers, since he kind of seems to like the boxing and stuff like that, you know, because like when we get to talk with McCullough, he's always very detailed and very vivid with his answers. But again, it's like very, you know, just kind of chill and matter of fact. But I could see him, you know, having different players on, different coaches on, and just kind of chopping it up, and it would be pretty entertaining, I think, listening to that. So
for sure.
I think if you put Bulla and McCullough together, I mean, I think that could be like a dynamic kind of podcast.
That could be good. That could be really good, actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
That could be good.
What if you went with former Notre Dame coaches? Like we can stick to head coaches here.
Okay.
You know, like Lou Holtz has his own podcast right now, but any former coaches?
Well, I mean, if this is the world of make believe, then I would like to have Rockney have a podcast. I would love to hear about like the innovations of football and stuff like that.
We're gonna go up. We're gonna go over. We're gonna go run
them. That's pretty good.
Say, did you see the game last Saturday?
All of a sudden, it's 1920s. I love it. I think he would be fascinating to listen to, but obviously that can't happen. So.
Yeah, but we're wishing, right? I think actually Newt would be a very good one.
Yeah, because again, he was on the cutting edge of football at the time, and so I would love to talk to him about that, and then let him know kind of where things are now and see what his opinion would be of college football and all of those different things. So I think that would be fascinating, to be honest with you. Then, as far as coaches that are living. Currently.
Yes.
Obviously narrow it down.
Technology is available and they have pulses. Yes.
I mean, you know, like Ty Willingham was a really nice guy, but I don't know how good of a podcast it would be. You know what I mean? Like,
I think Weiss would actually be a pretty good podcast. I mean, he's obviously doing some radio now for Sirius XM, but I mean, the guy obviously likes to talk. And he likes to talk about football, and he's got the kind of personality that would be good for, you know, and he knows a lot of people, and, you know, not always afraid to let you know that he knows a lot of people. And that, like, I think
that's a good point.
There'd be something.
He'd be a storyteller. He would be
exactly.
He'd be name dropping left and right, which I think would be interesting all by itself.
Right.
Because that's the kind of guy that I feel like he would be. The only other guy I can think of, and I think he's still alive, would be Jerry Faust. Just because he's such a huge like Notre Dame fan, and you know, coming straight from the high school ranks to Notre Dame, and I know he will.
I'm not sure. Did Vince just freeze up? Okay, Vince, thanks, John. Apparently, Vince is frozen. I was a lot of times what happens is when something freezes, it's usually on my end. So I was kind of sitting here waiting to see, is it me? Is it him? So let me text Vince. And I'm not sure exactly where Vince was going with that. But I am the one here now. So thanks for, I was kind of waiting to see if the chat was still going or not. I do like this comment from Salty. Weiss would have a decided podcast advantage. I mean, that like kind of says it all. I think right there. I think that nails the point why Weiss would be good. Sean Stewart said Weiss and Quinn, and I mean that would be good. They each have their own radio shows right now, so I mean I think that would be good. But Vince is back. I sat here for a while.
It's weird.
I wasn't sure if it was my internet that was frozen or yours that was frozen.
It was weird, dude. I was in the middle of talking, and all of a sudden my computer goes black, and it just shut down and decided to restart.
All right. Well, I'm glad you got back as quickly as you did. But somebody said DK was talking about Chad Bowden as far as the current staff. And I think that would be a really good, and that would be like a purposeful podcast as well when you look at his position. Like both with the personality and, just the importance of the role that he has over there. I think that would be a really good podcast, actually.
It would have to be like unfiltered, because I would like to know a lot of things about, why is he not recruiting my kid and things of that. No, I'm just kidding. But no, I would like to know a lot of the ins and the outs of like his day-to-day routine. And, I think that would be fascinating. I mean, like the inside look at the recruiting at Notre Dame. I think that would be absolutely fascinating. There's a lot of stuff you couldn't say. Right. You know what I mean?
Salty dropped this in while you were out. Weiss would have a decided podcast advantage.
That's good. That's well done. That is well played.
Points for Salty on that one.
Yes.
Fill in the blank. The EA Sports College Football 25 game that is set to release in less than a month put out their list of the toughest places to play in college football, and it's blank that they have Texas A&M's Kyle Field at number 1 on their list.
Somewhat surprising is my answer. I would not have picked A&M, but I've never been there, so I guess I can't really say that they're wrong. The scary part is I kind of trust EA Sports more than I trust like Pro Football Focus for some of their opinions that they put out there. Because I'm sure EA Sports like asked hundreds and hundreds of people, what's the toughest place you've ever played in, stuff, things along those lines. But I am very surprised that Texas A&M is number 1. That shocks me.
I'm surprised as well. And you look, A&M, they have number 1, Alabama number 2, LSU at number 3, then Ohio State, Georgia, Penn State, Wisconsin, Oklahoma, Florida State, and Florida in the top 10. And really, Wisconsin, I don't know what, because they do jump around between the third and fourth quarter. I mean, like all of those other places, with the exception of Florida, and while I guess in Alabama as well, Notre Dame has been to all of those places.
Yeah.
At least, probably since 2007. I think that was 07 when they went to Penn State. So they've been to all of except for LSU. So LSU, Alabama, A&M, and Florida. So they've been to 6 of those other places. 5. I can't do math because they haven't been to Wisconsin either. But my point is, you don't hear A&M talk like you hear 12th man and all that stuff, but you don't hear A&M sort of with that reverential, like, oh, it's the toughest place to play. Like I think Tennessee would probably come to mind for a lot of people, especially when Tennessee is at their peak, compared to Texas A&M. So I was a little surprised to see it in there as well.
Michigan's not on there. I thought that was a pretty raucous environment when I was up there for the Notre Dame Michigan game at night. I'm a little surprised they're not in the top 10, to be honest with you. I don't want to give them a whole lot of credit, but that was an omission in my eyes.
You buy or sell Notre Dame Stadium, not in the top 10.
I buy it because it's not. I mean, it's not.
And that's the problem. Notre Dame needs to work. I think they're getting better. They've been better the last few years because of the things that they're doing, especially for the night games. But they got to work to make it a much more home field advantage.
Yes,
they really do.
I mean, you're right. It's getting better with the media stuff that they do, the videos, the music, a lot of that kind of stuff. I think it's getting better, but I just don't know that it'll ever be in the top 10. I find that to be, there's too many older season ticket holders that are going, they got money. They're not going to give up their seats.
Part of the deal, and I realize people, do their thing out in the tailgates.
That's part of it.
But they're not selling alcohol in the stadium. I saw Michigan is going to start selling alcohol in there. Most of these other places are selling alcohol in the stadiums.
Yeah.
Now, and whether you want to bow to it or not, that plays into the environment, right? Because what happens when you drink a few, you become less inhibited, right?
Yeah.
You're much more uninhibited when you do that, and that plays a part of it. And maybe Notre Dame wants to continue to avoid that. I don't know, but all these other places, most of them anyway, they're selling beer in the stadiums.
That's a really good point. Some people in the chat are saying, there's too many visiting fans in the stadium. I don't think I don't see that being a problem. I don't.
No.
It especially recently has not been the issue that people make it out to be. It's like Notre Dame players getting injured in the Navy game. Like that's not the problem that you think it is. I don't think that Notre Dame fans selling their tickets is the issue people think it is.
No. And like Ohio State last year, right? Everyone was worried about Ohio State taking over the stadium, and that didn't happen.
That did not happen.
Far from it.
That did.
It was a great environment from a pro Notre Dame standpoint.
Yes.
But yeah, like this whole opposing thing, no, that doesn't, because what about the other, 5-6 home games a year? Is it a like those are largely high majority a pro Notre Dame home crowd.
Yes.
And it's still not a huge home field advantage.
Yep. Agreed.
So it's just not the big games. Yep. NCAA Division I Council has approved a rule change that's going to allow all football staff members now to provide coaching on the field during practices and games. It removes the restrictions from the NCAA's previous maximum of 11 countable coaches. You good with this change?
I mean, it allows teams to basically legally do what they've been doing already. How about that? I don't really have an issue with it. I think some schools are going to way overdo it, and they're going to try to bring in all these different people, and then it's just going to be too much. There's going to be too many voices in the ears of these players. You can have too many coaches. Like that is an absolute thing, right? And we talked about it back even when, you had quarterback coaches, you had offensive coordinators, you had head coach all in the ear of the quarterback. Like that's a problem, right? I think this could get out of hand and you could have too many coaches, and eventually I think you'll see it dialed back in.
Well, I mean, it's still up to the head coach who he wants on a headset and who he wants participating in that.
Oh, for sure.
Like just because there's not a there's not a limit doesn't mean he has to let it, everyone, be chiming in or whatever. They can wear the headsets and listen.
Right. I'm talking about at practice, like actually like getting coached up individually at practice. I think that there's a point where there's too many voices. That's what I'm saying. And I think these SEC teams, they're going to bring in like 25 different analysts and they're going to have them all out on the field. It's going to be too many. It's going to be too much.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I think that they'll scale it back at some point.
Yeah. I mean, I think that it's good because it lets you take advantage of your resources. I think, the bigger thing is like they're loosening this limit, but at the same time, at some point, some kind of roster limit is going to come to college football. And we don't know what that's going to look like. We don't know what the walk-on situation is going to, all of that different stuff, so are there going, like there's an 85-man scholarship limit right now. What's the roster limit going to look like? Like, are you actually going to need, this unlimited amount of coaches out there, so I think it's good, but, again, just like anything, you have to be able to sort of manage it and, sort of do it proportionally. I thought you went away there again for a second. I was worried.
I had to sneeze, and I don't want that screen grab out there. So
good. So yesterday we played part of Jim Schlossnagle's College World Series postgame press conference. After his Texas A&M team lost in the national championship game, he lit up a reporter who asked him about his future at A&M after the Texas head coach had been fired that same day. And Well, let's play the question and Schlossnagle's answer as a refresher. Again, we played this yesterday. There was a definite response and reaction to it yesterday. So this is his response right after he had lost in the national championship game to Tennessee. Hey, it wasn't said specifically Texas, but here you go.
Circulating today about a specific job opening. What do you have to say about your future in Aggieland?
I mean, I think it's pretty selfish of you to ask me that question, to be honest with you. But I left my family to be the coach at Texas A&M. I took the job at Texas A&M to never take another job again, and that hasn't changed in my mind. That's unfair to talk about something like that. That'd be like you asking Montgomery if he's going to sign in the draft. But I understand you got to ask the question, but I gave up a big part of my life to come take this job, and I've poured every ounce of my soul in this job, and I've given this job every single ounce I can possibly give it. So write that.
Write that.
Write that. So it's blank, Vince, that less than 24 hours after saying all that, Schlossnagle, in fact, left Texas A&M, and he is now the head coach at the University of Texas.
I think it's ridiculous. Number one, you can not like a question that's asked. Just say no comment. I have a hard time with people doubling down on the fact that I'm staying here. I love this job. I gave up half my life to come here. This is a destination job. And then 24 hours later, you're the head coach someplace else. Like, dude, I'd have a lot. Like, you are more than welcome to take another job. I have no problem with that. But don't take somebody out to the woodshed for asking the question and double down on it like you just did, and then go and do exactly what you said you're not going to do. It's an
when
integrity
it's
problem.
Obvious that, again, he says all that. He tells the reporter that the reporter is the selfish one for asking the question.
Right.
He uses his family as a shield in this. He says it's an unfair question to ask. And he says that he went to Texas A&M to never take another job again, and that hasn't changed. So what? Again, less than 24 hours later, he storms off the stage after so write that. He's the head coach less than 24 hours later. He had the press conference today. Now, I saw it today in his press conference. He did apologize to the reporter.
Oh, did he?
And he said the reporter's, he used the reporter's name and apologized to him. But, yesterday we've got people saying, because again, this is before, like literally we're done with the show yesterday. Jesse sends me this tweet that there are reports that he's actually going to take the job, but we played that quote yesterday, that same soundbite yesterday, before he had actually taken the job, and there were any reports out there that he was taking it. We've got people like, oh, what a stupid question. It's like, that's why you ask the question as a reporter. That's why you ask the question, because now look how differently everyone is looking at that same response. Again, less than 24 hours later. It's ridiculous that he got up there and reacted the way he did. And again, he turned it on the reporter. There are much better ways that he could have addressed that.
Absolutely.
Just like, I just lost the national championship game. I don't even want to talk about that right now.
Yes, that's exactly what he should have said.
It's all he had to say.
Right.
But it's obvious that he had already been talking to Texas at that point. So all this whole thing, that whole response just makes him look even dumber than he would have looked.
He could have shielded up and done exactly what you just said and just said, look, man, I don't know that that's the time or the place for that conversation. I'm hurting right now. The game that just went on, we can have that conversation at a later date. I appreciate the question. It's just not something I'm going to answer right now.
Right.
What's wrong with that?
Yeah.
And clearly he knew he was going to take that job.
And that's my point. Like he was talking to Texas while he's still coaching Texas A&M. Yet he's saying all this stuff about, I'm here at Texas A&M so I can never take another job. And it's like, it's obvious as those words are coming out of his mouth that he fully intended on taking another job. And it's just ridiculous that he reacted the way he reacted.
How do those words come out of your mouth when you know that you're lying? You know what I mean? Like, you're not being truthful with people.
Right.
Like, that is just a bold-faced, to-your-face lie.
Right.
And that's the biggest issue. Like, how can you trust this guy? How can you trust this guy? He just lied to America with no problem and got indignant about it. Like, not only did he lie, but he's like, that's a terrible question. I can't write that. And then now we're writing about the fact that he took another job.
Yeah. Well, the crazy thing is Texas fired a really successful head coach, David Pierce, to hire Schlossnagle. Now Schlossnagle, his relationship with Del Conte, the Texas athletic director, goes back to their time together at TCU. But the guy that Texas fired had only missed the NCAA tournament once in his 8 years, and he took them to the College World Series 3 times. If you're A&M, it seems like there's a pretty good alternative on the market right now.
Well,
if you wanted to just go out and hire their head coach.
Schulte has a real good point here. He says A&M should hire Pierce.
There you go. I didn't even see that.
With Texas paying a buyout.
Yeah. There you go. This is apparently the most expensive college baseball coaching move ever, because it was like a $2.7 million buyout to get him and the whole thing.
That's nuts.
It's crazy. Slip a couple more in here. Andre says, if Notre Dame goes undefeated and looks dominating, are they beating Georgia or Ohio State and Oregon in the playoff?
That's way too much speculation for me. I need to see how Georgia and Ohio State and Oregon look. Georgia could be 9-3 in this season if you look at their schedule. Their schedule is murderer's row. Okay, there's a chance they don't even make the playoff. So I need to see how everybody plays before I start saying that Notre Dame is going to dominate and beat all these other teams. Because the other thing is they're not even going to see those teams until at least the second round, if not the third round. So I'm going to have to hold off on that. Andre, it's a good question, and I appreciate it. But let's see what everybody looks like at the end of the year, and then I'll tell you whether I think Notre Dame can beat them or not.
Salty had a couple of recruiting questions that he plopped in there as well. He said if the Irish could have strong recruiting success in one state, choosing between California, Texas, and Florida, which should it be? I mean, to me, it's just honestly the state that has the best players. It doesn't matter where they come from as long as they're good, right? Or great, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess out of the choice that you're giving me, I guess I'll take Texas because I think there's probably more choices in Texas. Second place for me would probably be Florida and then California because I think I have a better shot at Notre Dame of getting players out of Florida and Texas than I do of California. Not that I don't have that possibility. I do, and I would still do it, but I think that there's more West Coast draw for kids than there is draw for kids in Florida per se. Like Notre Dame's done a good job in Florida, and they've done a good job in Texas recently as well. So I guess that's the order I would go in.
Yeah. Like I said, the state that they happen to come from doesn't matter to me. So I would
not even a little bit.
Yeah, just wherever the best players are. I think that's my answer to that. So Vince, you've heard of the movie A Bridge Too Far, right?
I have.
Have you ever seen it?
I have not. I have not seen it.
I had never seen it before this weekend either, and I recorded it. World War II movie from 1977.
Hey.
Do you know anything about it? Like
nothing. Nothing outside of what I looked up the crew, the cast and stuff like that. It's a star-studded cast.
I tell you what, I had never seen it. It's one of these that I've probably seen it on the channel guide before and flipped over and maybe watched a couple minutes of it. But never. It's a 3-hour movie for one, but it's it's about Operation Market Garden, World War II.
Okay,
which I didn't know a ton about in detail, the specifics. But the cast of this movie is what stood out to me as I started watching it. Sir Laurence Olivier, Michael Caine, Sean Connery, Anthony Hopkins, Gene Hackman, Ryan O'Neal, Elliot Gould, James Caan, Robert Redford, and Maximilian Schell, who is basically like the German in every World War II movie from the 60s and 70s. But that's what stood out. I'm watching this movie and every prominent person is one of the most famous actors in the world when this movie is being made in 1977. It's literally like an all-star game. It's like that cast combined to win 11 Oscars, and the director, George Attenborough, won 2 Oscars himself. It's like,
wow.
How is that like the best, not the best cast ever assembled in movie history? That's what I'm thinking as I'm watching this thing.
It's impressive. I will tell you that. Now I have this app that tells me where movies are, and it said it was on Fubo, but then I went to Fubo and I can't find it. So that's a little disturbing.
Yeah,
but,
it's 3 hours long, which again is probably why I
Yeah.
never invested more time watching it before. And it's, again, it's like Operation Market Garden, which the real, like, I know what, like I had a couple World War II history, classes in college, and I know it touched on it, but not like detail, like the whole detail of this. Like probably what I knew most about Market Garden was, you've seen Band of Brothers.
Right? Oh yeah. Yep.
Do you remember the Band of Brothers episode? It's their second jump where they jump into Holland and they liberate Eindhoven in Holland. That was part of Operation Market Garden.
Okay.
And I knew that the big, like big picture Market Garden, was a flop and all that kind of stuff. Basically, it was like, they were the big objective was to take this bridge in Arnhem, because they were everyone, you always want to take the bridges and all that kind of stuff. But that was the objective.
Okay.
Was that, and then the British end up, the British were a big part of the whole, operation. They get obliterated basically. But again, it's like I'm watching this movie, and there's this all-star studded cast, and like an hour and a half into the movie, all of a sudden there's Robert Redford for the first time. He shows up an hour and a half.
Wow.
Arguably the biggest star in the world in 1977. And he shows up an hour and a half. He's like this major, and he's got like 3 scenes in the whole movie. It's like Barry Bonds pitch hitting in an all-star game or something. But
that's awesome.
I don't know. I was hoping maybe you had seen it.
Sorry.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, Sean is like, is going to give like Operation Market Garden big details here, Sean Stewart. But the main objective was the bridge in Arnhem, but there were, 3 other bridges they were trying to secure as well. But it was very interesting, between the cast and just seeing the detail, like what the other thing that stood out to me after watching it is like Market Garden was a big failure, and you don't usually see like that amount of stars and like a movie made about something that ultimately was a failure. You know what I mean?
That's true.
It's like
everybody's looking for the happy
like
ending.
Friday Night Lights, the game, the movie ends with a loss, right?
Oh,
you don't see
spoiler.
You don't see that happen very often.
Spoiler alert. Speaking of movies, I want to bring this up.
Okay.
Stymie says, I'm anxious to see Costner's new film Horizon this weekend. He says he hasn't been to a movie theater in probably over a decade.
Wow.
Crazy. This one's just a little over 3 hours. Are you interested in that movie?
I had never heard of it. Is this the Western that
Yes.
he's been making?
It's a 2-parter. They're going to release this weekend is the first part. The second part doesn't come out until the middle of August.
Oh, wow.
So I don't know if they're both 3 hours long or what.
Like, I never got into Yellowstone, and so I don't know.
Did you watch any of it?
No.
Never watched any of it.
Nope.
It is worth your time.
Is it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know my wife brought it up one point. I think it was on, is it on Paramount?
It is. It's on
Yeah,
Paramount.
see, we don't, that's like probably the only main, like big streamer we don't have.
I get that too. But it is also on Peacock, because that's where I started to watch it.
Okay.
And so you don't get the new ones, but you get like once the season's over, they throw it over on Peacock, kind of a thing.
Gotcha.
It is a little disturbing at times, and it can be a little jarring at times, but it is a good series.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Stymie's got his Donald Sutherland oddball from Kelly's Heroes. What do you call that? Photo in there. Have you ever seen Kelly's Heroes?
No.
Oh, man.
I'm struggling with you today, I guess.
You got to see Kelly's Heroes. I watched that over the weekend as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I watched Kelly's Heroes first because of Donald Sutherland passing last week, and that was one of my Kelly's Heroes Dirty Dozen, like two of my favorite Donald Sutherland performances. Kelly's Heroes is like a little bit of dramedy, like World War II dramedy, They're trying to go after this bank and take some Nazi gold in the middle of World War II. Really good cast. Clint Eastwood. Lou Holtz, Thunder and Bolts, thanks again for the super chat. He says, at the end of the season, how will we know if Lauren Lando was successful in year one? How much can does he move the needle on Notre Dame's championship goals?
I mean, look, at the end of the year, we can count up how many injuries took place. There were a lot of hamstrings last year, obviously, which you can, look back on. I mean, Notre Dame, I think in Marcus Freeman's eyes, they upgraded, in the strength and conditioning because Lauren is more of a innovative, new age, using the technology type of guy, right? And so they look at that as an upgrade. I think Bayless did a great job. Like Bayless elevated the strength and conditioning program at Notre Dame. No two ways about it. When was the last time, we thought that Notre Dame didn't have a good November? You know what I mean? Like they've been strong in November ever since Bayless took over. And so I think it's going to take a little bit, but let's see hamstrings. Let's see the wear and tear injuries. Like
that's the biggest thing for me is like, because, unfortunately, like people are going to get upset, and that, like, I don't even like to, kind of put it out there, but like when you talk about, for an example, someone who has, like tears an Achilles or tears an ACL or, those are actual injuries that happen in the course of the game. And there's nothing that a strength coach can do about those kind of things. A shoulder injury that pops up,
like
those
a broken
kind of
arm.
Things, obviously broken bones. Strength coach can't do anything about that. It's the soft tissue stuff that's got to get cleaned up. And the fact that, Jaden Thomas obviously had hamstring stuff last year and it reemerged in the spring. And there were a few hammies in the spring still.
Yeah.
That's the kind of stuff that's got to get reduced. Like, to me, that's going to be a big thing. And, like the difference between like what Lando is doing and what Bayless was doing. Bayless was more the, bulk mass strength type stuff, whereas Marcus Freeman brought Lauren Lando in for more of the dynamic explosiveness, new school, if that's what you want to call it. That's more what Lando seems to specialize in, is that kind of thing. The dynamic speed, explosiveness, change of direction, all that different kind of stuff, sort of like trying to train the bodies to be more athletic, essentially. So but I think the most basic thing that we're going to look at is, are those soft tissue type things, the hamstring type injuries, reduced this year under Lando? I think that's the big thing that I'll be looking for.
Yep. Agreed.
Wanted to ask you one last question, because I was listening to a podcast today. They were talking about the Bad News Bears.
Okay.
And you've seen the Bad News Bears, right?
Both versions and all of the sequels of the original.
Right. One of the scenes, they go into the Pizza Hut in the original Bad News Bears.
Yes.
Like the post-game Little League Pizza Hut celebration.
Yes.
Are you old enough that was still a thing when you were growing up? Like, you finish the game, you go to Pizza Hut, and you live it up with the baseball team.
100%. Yes, absolutely. Excellent. Loved going to the Pizza Hut buffet. Was where it's at. And I love the Pizza Hut buffet, first of all. Let me just be very clear on that. And then also Book It. You take your little Book It thing in there and you get the personal pan pizza and you get the button with the stars on it for doing your reading and stuff. Oh yeah, that is right up my alley of my youth. Yes.
I wasn't sure like if you would make the cutoff, because like as the 90s progressed, and it might have taken until the 2000s, like when the actual dine-in Pizza Hut buffet type places started disappearing. Like that was the thing though, man. Like you go in, after the game, you raid the Pizza Hut, everyone's still got their uniforms on and you're all dirty and you got your shirts untucked and everyone who was already in the Pizza Hut scrambles to get to the buffet before the team comes in, because they know the team is going to raid the pizza. That's right. But like you get your big plastic red cup, full of pop, and dads, the dads could go in and, they're like at their table with their pitchers of beer. And then the moms go to the salad bar and they've got their tab and all that kind of stuff. And
oh yeah,
kids are just killing the pizza. And it's like, why is there mushroom and a hamburger or pepperoni pizza on this? Like bring out the fresh pepperoni pizza. I don't want the pizza with the mushrooms and the vegetables.
100%. 100%. Yes.
See, Tommy is a young guy. He's saying Pizza Hut is,
oh, you're full of
crap,
it, Tommy.
like,
you don't understand.
You are too young to remember, Tommy, because if I remember right, you were born like mid-'80s. You're way too young to remember, like, Pizza Hut was the thing, especially that Pizza Hut buffet back in the day. That was it, man.
We also did Shakey's. I don't know if you had a Shakey's near you.
We had a Shakey's and we had a place called Straw Hat Pizza.
Okay.
I think it was one place had a Shakey's, another place had a Straw. I think they were fairly similar, if I remember.
Yeah.
Right.
So we had a Shakey's, and one of my friends growing up, his dad owned the local Shakey's. And so we would go there a lot as well because, Richard's dad owned the place. And so we would go there for parties all the time. But yes, Pizza Hut was absolutely top notch. Top notch.
Top of the line, man.
It was
top
awesome.
of the line. You were living when you went to Pizza Hut after
oh
the
my
game.
gosh, it was unbelievable. And it's funny, when I was in high school, I dated a girl who was from a very small town. And what they would do for fun is they would go to the big town and go to Pizza Hut and hit the buffet as high school kids. Like that was the hangout, was to go to the Pizza Hut, which I thought was pretty funny. And so I had many a Pizza Hut date back when I was in high school.
Very nice.
So, yeah.
Sloppy Joe, by the way, going back to the Bad News Bears, he says the newer one. He says the remake is better. The Billy.
Oh, hard pass. No.
Yeah. No
Disagree
way.
completely.
Sorry. Like it's obvious that the movies were made like 30 years apart, right? Like, let's just put it that way. I mean, you had, again, like Walter Matthau and Tatum O'Neal, for starters, had both won Academy Awards. Before the Bad News, you had 2 Academy Award winners in that movie.
Yes.
And, most of the cast, most of the, the kids really went on to do nothing. But Kelly Leak, Jackie Earle Haley, like, how can you say no to that?
Just saying.
Yep.
Fred Benson with a terrible take. No offense, Fred. But he says Pizza Hut was great back in the day, but Domino's and Papa John's are better.
Ooh.
Saved $10 on my Papa John's order with Papa Dough. Order cost me $13. Papa John's is the worst pizza on the planet. I'm sorry. I can't stand Papa John's.
The only good thing about Papa John's is when it's free. Like, that's literally the only time. It is kind of cool, though, by the way, this thing that have you seen these commercials that Domino's is doing where, like, if you tip the delivery guy at least $3, they'll give you a credit for the next time you order. So, like,
really?
if you tip the delivery guy at least $3, you get they give you a credit for they'll take it off your next order, basically.
I did not know that. I've never done delivery, so ever.
It's been a while since we've done delivery.
My wife's always like, get in the car and go get it. You're
that's right.
Fine.
Got to save the money. We're not paying the delivery fee.
Not paying the delivery fee.
Right.
So yeah, and people need to understand, we're talking about old school Pizza Hut back in the day when it was the buffet.
Yes.
We're not talking about the 2024 version of Pizza Hut.
Right. What you know as Pizza Hut today
completely different.
Pizza Hut in the 70s and 80s.
Completely different.
Probably even the early 90s for that matter.
Right. We are not talking about the Pizza Hut of today. So I need people to understand that. That's not the debate we're having.
Big difference. I realize we can't transport back in time, especially for the older or the younger guys. But that old school Pizza Hut buffet, man. Because like we had a teacher when I was in grade school who, if you got, I can't remember how many, if you aced your spelling test, however many in a row it was, he would take us to lunch at the Pizza Hut buffet as a reward. I only got it once. I don't know how many times I'd get like 9 out of 10.
But it's worth it.
Over again.
You'll never forget.
That's right. But I did it, whatever it was. I don't remember if it was 5 or 10 or however many it was. But that one time, I got my Pizza Hut lunch at the buffet for acing those spelling tests. I loved it.
That is awesome.
Yes.
That's something to strive for, man. Like if that was a reward,
I
that
know.
would be great.
You'll appreciate this because that same guy was like, he sort of like burst the illusion of the teacher, because I remember in the summer, it was after that year, went to the lumber yard and he had on like the
He's
apron
working.
at the lumber yard. It wasn't Home Depot, because I don't even know if they had Home Depot, but it was like the local lumber yard. He was working at the lumber yard. It's like, hold it, teachers have second jobs.
Yeah, all of them.
That's right. The first time I ever experienced that.
I love seeing the look on kids' faces when they see me like out in town, like for the first time ever. They do like the double take, and they're like, "Wait, what? You know?" Even to this day, when people see the dean out like at dinner or something, it's like they don't know if they should talk to me or what. It's pretty funny. It's hilarious.
There's the czar of discipline having dinner in the same.
Yeah. Well, a lot of times it's like going to Culver's or something like that, and the kids are working. You know what I mean? And they're like, name for the order. You know, it's pretty funny.
Mr. D'Addario.
Get it.
All right. Well, we will wrap it up with that. Some good pizza talk. Now we're all hungry here at the end. But those were the days, man. That Pizza Hut buffet. I wish that I could. I really do wish that I could just put people in a time machine and take you back like to 1985 and experience some of that.
I would kill to go back to that. I really would. Like that. I mean, the buffet in general has pretty much just kind of gone away. Unless you're going to like Golden Corral or something, and the clientele in there is not fantastic.
Yeah.
It's, you know, just like
it's like Chinese buffet is one of the few remaining. Chinese buffet and Golden Corral are like probably the only buffets left in the world.
Like me and my football buddies, when we were in high school, we used to take down like Ryan's, you know, like that kind of a thing. You know, Ryan's it was Ryan's, but like Ryan's and Ponderosa were owned by the same people.
Right.
But like we used to just, I mean, sure they lost money on people like us. You know what I mean? That's probably one of the reasons. But as soon as COVID hit, it's like that's all that stuff is gone. Just gone.
Yep.
It's a shame.
The way of the dinosaur. That's right. All right. Well, hit the like button before you leave. We appreciate you being here. Don't forget, tomorrow is We In, We Out Day on the show. And so if you're a member of the Champions Lounge, head over there and drop in your We In, We Out questions for us for tomorrow's show. There will also be a return of the whiteboard. You got a couple of different whiteboard things that a certain former linebacker is going to draw up on tomorrow's show, including something interesting. We saw a video, a little wrinkle that you can probably look forward to Texas A&M using this season, with Colin Klein being their new offensive coordinator. So there's a little wrinkle that we're going to draw up, that Jesse's going to draw up on tomorrow's show. So
I thought maybe he was going to use the whiteboard to draw up how he proposed.
Someone actually requested that, but
that's great.
He did go into detail. You probably did.
I'm going to have to go back and watch that then.
Yeah. Yep. He did. He did explain his proposal strategy on yesterday's show.
I'm interested to see how it went, because it took him. I feel like it took him about 10 years to come up with it.
No kidding. Ask his mom. All right. That's it. Hit the like button, subscribe, rate, review. We'll talk to you tomorrow. IB Nation Sports Talk.